Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're confronting something that I think for all of us feels universal, personal, and just inescapable: the digital leash.
Hmm. That's a good way to put it.
We all know that feeling, right? You want to be present. Maybe you're trying to focus on a big project for work, or you're with your family, or just, trying to enjoy a quiet afternoon.
And there's that pull.
There's that constant, subtle pull back to the little screen in your pocket. It's this feeling of just perpetual distraction, and frankly, for a lot of people, it's creating real conflict, real anxiety.
It truly is. We're in this constant state of low-level conflict with our devices. We rely on them for so much, but they often leave us feeling, well, depleted instead of connected.
So to really set the stage for how big this issue is, let's look at the numbers.
We have to. The data it's pretty staggering. Independent studies show that the average person checks their smartphone an astounding 205 times a day.
205 times. That statistic just proves this isn't about laziness or a lack of willpower. This is about being neurobiologically targeted.
Exactly.
So our mission for this deep dive is twofold. First, we're going to go deep into the science of how this technology hijacks the fundamental wiring of the human brain.
And second, and this is maybe the most important part for you listening, we are laying out 5 science-tested, DIY, actionable steps for moderation, for finally reclaiming your attention.
Okay, let's unpack this. We should probably start with the mechanism that drives all compulsive behavior.
Right.
If you look at addiction medicine over, say, the last couple of decades, the understanding has been completely revolutionized by neuroscience, and it all seems to revolve around one crucial neurotransmitter: dopamine.
And what's so fascinating here is really understanding dopamine's true role. It's not the pleasure chemical. That's what most people think.
It's the common wisdom, yeah.
But if you have a dopamine system working correctly, you aren't necessarily feeling pleasure. What you're feeling is motivation. Dopamine is crucial for our survival because it drives the cycle of wanting, learning, and seeking.
Okay, so give us that primal example. How did this help our ancestors, thrive out on the savannah?
Well, think back to our Paleolithic ancestors. They're looking for resources, right? They stumble upon a new watering hole, and there are gazelles there, reliably.
Okay.
That discovery triggers a dopamine spritz. It's a reward chemical, a sense of winning that reinforces the behavior. But that dopamine burst isn't the joy of eating the gazelle.
It's the motivation to go back.
It's the intense motivation. It's the conditioning that teaches the brain, hey, you should return to this spot. It's about prediction and learning.
So the brain registers a successful strategy, and dopamine basically chemically tattoos that behavior onto your consciousness.
Precisely. And the reverse is also true. If they go back to that spot and find nothing, their dopamine levels actually drop below baseline.
Which teaches them not to return.
Exactly. The system trains us to pursue high-value, high-return behaviors.
Now, here is where it gets interesting and, frankly, a bit unsettling. If we understand that core learning mechanism, we have to fundamentally recategorize the smartphone. I mean, is it still just a tool if it's operating on our brain like a casino?
It's the perfect analogy. Technology exploits what psychologists call the variable ratio reward schedule, and that is, bar none, the single most addictive reinforcement pattern known to science.
So you're pulling the lever, unlocking your phone, refreshing the feed, and sometimes you get a massive payout, a validating text, a crucial work email.
A hilarious meme, and sometimes you get nothing.
And that uncertainty, that unpredictability, that's what creates the highest addiction potential.
Precisely. The neurobiology of craving confirms this. See, dopamine is released not just when we receive the reward, but in the intense anticipation of potentially receiving it.
So when the reward is guaranteed, the dopamine surge is actually lower.
It is. When the reward is uncertain, the dopamine response is higher. Uncertainty creates more craving than certainty. This is what drives that escalation of use.
That perfectly explains the compulsive checking, that staggering frequency we mentioned, the infinite scroll, the slightly randomized notification timing, that addictive pull-to-refresh mechanism.
These are not glitches.
No, they're engineered features designed to mimic the slot machine lever, to ensure you keep gambling for that next digital win. So if the slot machine pulls us in with craving, what happens to our brain's baseline state when we're constantly feeding it? Does all that constant input permanently change how we perceive reality? Let's talk about this hyperstimulation trap.
It absolutely does. I mean, just look at the device itself. A smartphone screen produces sensory intensity colors that are highly saturated, movement that is lightning fast. It's
Yeah.
far beyond anything we encounter in the natural world.
So it's hyperstimulation.
It's hyperstimulation, and the consequence is that the brain adapts. It raises its tolerance. It raises the threshold for what counts as interesting or engaging.
That adaptation, it sounds an awful lot like the concept of tolerance we see in chemical addictions.
It mirrors it very, very closely. The result is that real life, a quiet conversation, the subtle colors of the sunset, reading a physical book, it all starts to look, well, gray by comparison.
Because your baseline has shifted.
Your brain has been recalibrated to expect intense digital feedback. So you need more and more stimulation just to feel the same level of basic engagement.
And this problem is accelerating at an incredible rate, especially with the rise of ultra short form videos, USFV, things like TikTok or
Oh,
Reels.
absolutely.
The sources note the average shot length is now unbelievably short, just 1.8 seconds. Content chopped into microscopic chunks.
And the neurological costs of this chronic microdosing of chopped up content are now being revealed in studies. We're seeing real functional decline. One piece of research found that heavy USFV users performed 27% worse on tests measuring sustained attention.
27%. That's staggering. Where is that deficit actually showing up in the brain?
Well, fMRI scans show diminished activation in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, DLPFC.
And what does that part of the brain do?
That region is the seat of your attentional focus, your executive control. It's your ability to ignore distractions. So when that area is underactive, the mental effort you need to ignore a notification or switch tasks, it increases exponentially.
So, in plain English, your brain is learning to crave disruption, and it's literally forgetting how to sustain focus.
That's exactly it.
Okay, that's our attention. What about our memory?
Researchers also identified significant memory fragmentation. They measured something called theta wave coherence, which is strongly associated with deep encoding.
Deep encoding being.
The process your brain uses to form robust declarative memories, so facts and events. After just some exposure to reels, that coherence dropped by 18%.
Wow. So while you might still be able to learn a skill, your ability to deeply absorb and recall facts or, say, complex narratives is compromised.
It's compromised. And if this is chronic, yes, there are structural costs. The brain actually changes shape.
So it's not just function, it's structure.
Sadly, yes. Chronic hyperstimulation is linked to decreased gray matter density in the anterior cingulate cortex, the ACC.
And the ACC is important for?
Crucial functions: decision-making, monitoring conflicts, emotion regulation. If that physical structure is degrading, users become less capable of managing frustration. They become more impulsive, more vulnerable to emotional swings.
And even when we try to focus on real-world tasks, we suffer from what the research calls continuous partial attention, CPA. What does that actually feel like day to day?
It's that constant low-level buzz of knowing an email is waiting, of feeling the mental residue of the last notification while you're trying to engage in the current task. We even see physical manifestations of this, like phantom scroll behavior.
Phantom scroll.
It's a conditioned motor response where you scroll your thumb on a static document or even on a dinner table because your body is anticipating the next digital input.
And the cost of trying to switch back to a real task after engaging with the phone is immense. The data shows high USFV users are drastically more susceptible to task switching costs, up to 34%.
Which means deep work becomes not just difficult, but neurochemically painful.
So we've covered the neuroscience, the hardwiring, but the device also exploits our soft wiring, right? If the addiction is the lock, then our psychology, things like loneliness and boredom, are often the key.
This is why the technology works so well. It taps into these ancient, profound needs. FOMO, fear of missing out, is a perfect example.
It gets dismissed as a silly buzzword.
It does, but it's really an evolutionary pressure that's being weaponized against us. For early humans, social exclusion meant death, so the brain developed hypervigilance for social information.
So when our amygdala detects that we might be missing a social cue or an event online, it doesn't just register slight sadness, it registers it as a threat.
Exactly. Studies show the amygdala interprets perceived social exclusion as a threat, and it triggers the same pain circuits in the brain as physical pain. The technology exploits this primal fear by showing us a continuous curated highlight reel of everything we aren't doing.
Constantly triggering that fear response.
Constantly.
But the irony is that what we're receiving isn't real connection. We're seeking human warmth, But we're getting a digital chill.
We are starving for connection. Specifically for the neuropeptide oxytocin, people call it the love molecule, which is released through strong social bonds, eye contact, and physical touch.
And social media doesn't provide that.
We binge on social media because we're desperate for that oxytocin, but virtual connection provides only a tiny, insufficient trickle.
So what you're describing is a self-reinforcing deficit cycle. We seek connection. It makes us feel lonely because the connection is shallow. So we crave more oxytocin. And then we spend more time online looking for the next hit.
You've got it. Social media becomes the junk food of love.
That's a great description. It fills the void temporarily, but lacks the nutritional components, the depth, the reciprocity, the vulnerability for genuine psychological nourishment.
Right.
And this malnourishment extends into our most intimate relationships, even when we are physically sitting next to someone. The research talks about the destructive issue of phubbing.
Phubbing. It's prioritizing the phone over in-person interaction, and it isn't benign. It drastically diminishes relationship satisfaction and leads to measurable increases in perceived stress, which can then negatively affect sleep quality.
And it doesn't even have to be active use, right?
The research is incredibly clear on this. Even having the phone face down on a table during a meal acts as a third party in the conversation. It interrupts the delicate neurochemistry required for human bonding. We're hardwired to eat together while making eye contact. That co-presence is essential for robust oxytocin release.
Okay, so we've laid out the entire hijack sequence, from the dopamine anticipation to the cognitive costs and the emotional malnourishment. Now, for the crucial question, what is the solution? Is it cold turkey, or is moderation the answer?
Well, for neurotoxins like alcohol or substances designed purely for intoxication, abstinence is usually the most prudent path.
But you can't really do that with a smartphone.
You can't. Abstinence is simply impractical for modern life. You need it for banking, reservations, two-factor authentication, boarding passes. Our goal has to be strategic, mindful moderation.
And we know exactly how much room for reduction exists because the research tells us how much of our time is compulsive, not chosen.
Absolutely. One analysis found that Americans spend 31% of their total device time solely because of addiction, not necessity or purposeful engagement.
So that gives us a clear floor for reduction targets. We can immediately reclaim nearly a third of that screen time.
That's the goal.
Fantastic. So let's dive into the 5 science-tested DIY actionable steps for moderation that the research identified, starting with boundaries.
Step 1. Establish tech-free times. This means banning the phone during specific, non-negotiable periods. That means the first hour you are awake,
Critical.
the last hour before bed, and all meal times.
Right, the morning rule is so important. You need to be present in real life, in your body, in your home, before you step into the digital simulation. Use a mechanical alarm clock. Read a physical book.
And the evening rule isn't just about presence. It's about blue light interference, which suppresses melatonin and enhances cortisol. It thoroughly messes with your sleep architecture.
Okay, so that's tech-free time. Step 2 is about physical borders.
Tech-free zones. The most important zone is the bedroom. We highly recommend creating a phone foyer or just plugging the phone in downstairs, maybe in a closet. The goal is to separate sleep and social stimulation.
We also saw strong arguments for institutional change here, like banning personal mobile phones in the classroom, from kindergarten all the way through PhD program.
That's right. The mere presence of a phone, even face down, dramatically impacts student engagement and cognitive bandwidth. Removing that variable reward machine from the learning environment is a huge step toward restoring focus.
Okay, step 3 addresses the need for a nervous system reset.
Device-free breaks. We need periods of total withdrawal. Schedule 1, ideally for a minimum of 4 days a year. Maybe it coincides with a retreat or a camping trip.
And what do people experience?
The pattern is incredibly consistent. The first day involves craving, anxiety, distress. By the third day, a feeling of peace and calm settles in. By the fourth, people often report a desire to extend the break.
And that proves that the anxiety you feel when cutting down is just temporary. It's just your neurochemistry recalibrating.
That's all it is.
Okay, so that's space and time. Step 4 is about how we engage when we do use the device. Mindful consumption.
You must use your device on purpose, not automatically. We know 86% of Americans admit to using their phones automatically. So we need to stop grazing. We need to eat mindfully.
So set specific time-boxed windows for social media. What's a good target?
A good target for those compulsive apps is a total maximum of 30 to 45 minutes daily.
I love the culinary analogy here. If you're going to eat junk food, don't eat it out of the container standing over the sink. Put it in a bowl, sit at the table.
Be fully present.
It's like the Buddhist master Thich Nhat Hanh said, while washing the dishes, one should only be washing the dishes. Your screen time should be the same. Fully present, time-boxed, and intentional.
And that intentionality leads directly to step 5. Turn off notifications.
Hmm.
This is the fundamental defense against the device hijacking your dopamine system. The device uses that little ding, that flag, that buzz to give you a predictable spritz of dopamine and pull you back in.
So you have to eliminate the trigger. Which notifications are safe to keep?
Turn off all non-essential notifications. Keep only those necessary for employment and maybe the basic ringer for immediate family, like your spouse or mother. Everything else, social media, news alerts, games, it has to be silenced. You must train the device to wait for you rather than letting it constantly interrupt your focus.
That is fantastic targeted advice. Finally, any quick bonus tips for just reducing the stimulation and making the device less compelling?
Yes, a very simple tweak that has a surprising neurological impact.
Yeah.
Change your phone screen settings to black and white or grayscale mode. The highly saturated, colorful display is designed to be beguiling and stimulating. By removing the color, the screen becomes objectively less visually appealing.
And that reduces the intensity of the reward.
It does, and it makes the checking frequency naturally decrease.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? The core of the problem is clear. Our brains are being neurobiologically targeted and really hijacked by systems designed to exploit the anticipation of dopamine.
And this hyperstimulation leads to cognitive and emotional malnourishment. We are trading genuine connection and deep focus for a quick, shallow burst of digital engagement.
And the solution isn't self-loathing, it's strategic intervention.
Exactly. If you feel anxiety or craving when you implement these boundaries, just recognize that's your neurochemistry recalibrating,
Right.
and it is temporary. The real goal is to crowd out the bad habit by engaging in positive, meaningful actions.
Go for a walk, build something.
Be fully present in a conversation so your brain learns to value that long-term eudaimonic well-being over the instant, fleeting digital hit.
Which brings us to our final thought. If this technology is deliberately engineered to exploit the brain's reward system, acting precisely like a slot machine to keep us engaged in selling our attention, what does the future require policymakers and platform designers? I mean, if we hold food manufacturers accountable for nutritional science and demand transparency on ingredients, shouldn't we demand a new discipline of, say, digital ergonomics? A field where designers are morally obligated to prioritize the cognitive well-being of the user over the endless pursuit of continuous engagement. Something for you to consider as you start implementing those 5 strategies this week.